We're back. You are chatting with John P. Today, I'm going to be covering whether or not you should purchase a watch in today's market. I have been getting asked this question so many times in the last few weeks, and I don't know if this is because, if this is a function of just the kind of the volatility maybe in other markets. You see things like crypto going up and down, and I'm in a couple of different chat groups with entrepreneurs and business people, and they're always talking about markets going up and down in terms of the crypto. So I don't know if this is somehow related or if this has something to do with the inflation that we're seeing or some of the other trends and almost phenomenons that we're observing. I think somehow it's related, but nonetheless, I'm going to be sharing with you my insights here today on reasons why you should or should not buy the watch present today, current market conditions. But please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com, where, yes, of course, we do sell watches, but we also buy them. So whether or not you want to sell the watch or you want to buy one, I think it's safe to say that, at least I can be somewhat not biased here with kind of the information that I'm sharing you. So as a watch dealer, we follow the trends. We see what watches are hot, what watches are not. Of course, pricing is probably the thing that we follow the most, right? Because we have to price the watches not only to sell, but to purchase. So we have to be really in tune with what's going on in the market. And we have a custom system that we've built out that sits on top of Salesforce, something I have a bit of a background in, of course, more than a bit of a background in, but you get the idea. And we track the pricing, we bring in different data, we aggregate it, and we look at some things that are going on. And what I see going on right now, more so than just prices going up, is this just the demand for watches that a year ago or even 6 months ago there was just no demand for. You see watches like FP Journe, which, let me give you a particular example, the Elegant. The Elegant was a quartz, a little bit more sophisticated than just quartz, but a battery-powered watch. I think the battery lasts for 12 years, so it's more sophisticated, but nonetheless, a battery-powered watch that I remember being offered one at $8,000 because the seller could not sell it maybe a year and a half ago. Now these things are trading. I don't even want to give you a number because this model is not only impossible to find, when you do see it, the numbers are bonkers. But I think maybe the last one that I saw trade was $40,000, but I think maybe the market sits at 25, depending on which Elegant it is. And so when you see watches like that, that's the FP Journe, very hot brand. But even branching out into something like a Daniel Roth, we took in some Daniel Roths recently, and they flew off the shelves. Daniel Roth, a now pretty much defunct brand, but part of Bulgari, they come out with Daniel Roth, sometimes branded watches. These flew off the shelf, and 6 months ago, a year ago, no one wanted them at all. And because of the demand, the prices are coming up. But I think it's actually, the pricing has become a function of the demand. Now, many of you people out there will say, that's just basic economics, but not totally, because when you consider that some of the watches are currently being produced today, but I'm also giving you an example like the Daniel Roth that's just not produced today. And so, when you have a Rolex, the Submariner just comes out with more and more and more, they can increase the supply and maybe tailor it to what they want the prices to be trading at secondhand. Now, I'm not saying Rolex is doing that, but it is possible. But when you start getting into some of these brands and models, give you another one. In vintage, we have Enicar. Enicar watches are well made, and they have a cult following. There's an entire book that you can purchase that covers every reference, for the most part, on Enicar watches. I think we have one here at Del Rey. But they were never a watch that would fly off the shelf. And now prime examples on Chrono 24 of certain Enicar models like the Enicar dive watches and 40 millimeters are just floating away. They're just gone, in a matter of a few days. And when I just also consider the raw number of contacts that we have, that's a metric, a KPI that we measure here, is the number of interactions with customers. It's gone up a lot on Chrono 24 and eBay. Now, eBay is spending a lot of time really trying to gain customers in the watch space. I get that, but Chrono 24 seems to be pretty level in their kind of interactions and the way that they engage watch collectors. But the number of people that are buying on Chrono 24 has gone through the roof. And once in a while, Chrono24 does publish data over there. The president, Tim, he's very good with this as well. In fact, I think they probably have like 20 PhD level data analytics personnel on their staff over in Germany, some in New York, and they analyze this as well, and they share this data. And it's a trend that I think that they saw in their last report, which may be 6 months ago, but I see it increasing, right? Now, I also engage with a lot of collectors, different things. I go out to places. I make sure if I see someone wearing a watch, I ask them about it because this is my life. I want to know what people are thinking, what drives them to buy watches, what motivates consumers. That's how, of course, I earn a living. And I'm seeing people buy watches now that never would have purchased watches before. And it's just they thought it was nice to have. There's some kind of factor out there in the marketplaces pushing people to buy watches. And it's not that they're into it as a hobby or as a geek, right? It's something else that's pushing them out there. Now, some people will say, oh, well, the consumer savings index was reporting that it was just so high. Consumers saved so much during COVID. Now it's this massive spending spree. And that may be true. Some people do say that they were just a little bit bored. They held on to cash. Now they have too much of it to burn. Apparently, these people are out there and this is what's happening. And you can kind of see airlines with the number of planes that they put out into their fleet. They took a lot of planes out during COVID. People weren't traveling, but there's a lot of correlation between e-commerce and the number of planes that exist out there. Now, it's not causal, of course, but it's something that e-commerce people track if they're a little bit nuanced. How many planes are out there and what does the consumer spending look like? And they're both going up at the same time. So naturally, the watch spending is going to go with it. But we're seeing people get into these brands. Like I said, the Journes, the Daniel Ross, these independents, these are not just Rolex watches that the demand is going up. And I'll say anecdotally, when I talk to people that I notice something out of the ordinary, it's just they heard that maybe it was a good investment. So on this channel, I always talk about watches are probably not a really great investment. There are a lot of factors at play. You just don't know which Hodinkee story is going to come out or which series of stories branching from Hodinkee that's going to go through all the watch journals out there and make or break a brand. Probably not break because most of them say only positive things, but maybe the brand will just get kind of overshadowed by a more popular brand or whichever brands spend the most with those magazines. So to say investment-wise, that's really not the angle that I take. It's always as a hobby, as an enjoyment, but something out there, whether it's the Wall Street Journal articles or the Vanity Fairs or the Vogues or whatever the people are reading, they are deciding out there that they should be investing in watches. We see it in vintage. Vintage watches are getting record-breaking hammer prices. These kind of independent watchmakers, the Journes, the Voutilainens, they're getting record prices. The unique watches out there are getting record prices, and that's because, in my opinion, and anecdotally, and also considering some of the data we collected, people that don't necessarily love watches are buying watches now, and they're doing it a lot. We've been approached here at Del Rey Watch by more than a few people that are professional investors, and they're looking to get some exposure to the watch industry. And this is not one person, this is many people. And generally, we just turn this down because for us, at Del Rey, myself, Federico, our whole team, we're passionate watch collectors. If it just becomes about the returns, that's not what we're really in this for in terms of the watches we like to add. We're all about the best value and having something nice and interesting and something you can actually geek out about more than just, well, is this Submariner going to be worth 15% more next year and, we'll realize some gains. That is so boring. Go to the stock market if you want to do that. It's not what we do. So we do get approached by these people, and the reality is that also interest and exposure goes to show that people are getting kind of bored with their money, or they're seeing crypto and they're like, well, maybe crypto's not the only alternative investment. Maybe there's other things. Maybe there's art. Well, art's getting kind of up there. It's a little bit nuanced. Let's get into watches. They're a little bit more liquid maybe. And so we're seeing that across the board. So what does that mean for you as a watch geek probably watching this, or as a watch collector? Should you buy a watch right now? I'm asked this all the time. I was asked this weekend by someone, and I had to really think about it. And I'd say it really depends, in my opinion, should you buy a watch right now. If it's a watch that's currently being produced, I would say you should probably buy it if it's not something that's going to make or break if you need it to be liquid. There are some people that will buy watches and they'll say, hey, I'll just get out of it if I need the cash. I think that might not be the best case scenario. You could do it, but just consider that if prices somehow do come down, since the watch is being produced, they could produce more and people could get rid of it, move on to something better. You may lose a little bit, but generally watch prices, you're not going to be taking a bath of like 80% the value when we're talking about, let's talk about the Seamasters, talk about the Submariners, talk about these kind of watches. Very rare, I believe, for something like that to happen. Very unlikely. But if we start talking about these ultra rare pieces, let's talk about some super high-end vintage pieces. I hate to say that, there might be someone watching this that might not necessarily like this, but when you talk about these these ultra high-end pieces, I'm talking $1 million, $2 million, and then we start getting into the Journes, backing up into a few $100,000 to $100,000, even $80,000 watches. Trust me, they're out there. These things trade all the time. I would say be a little bit cautious right now, because if you're getting into it and buying that watch as an investment, especially a short-term speculative investment. I know that's kind of it's kind of an oxymoron, speculative investment, but yes, we can look at it like that. I would say that that's probably not a great idea right now, because things seem to be changing very quickly in a way that I've never seen throughout my entire time collecting the last 12, 13 years, and also being a watch dealer and talking with other watch dealers, and also seeing these very new people to watches that don't know anything about watches, don't really care to know anything about watches, but just want to have watches for their own personal reasons, financial or to hand down, or tax reasons. Different reasons exist out there to own expensive items. Seeing these people get into the watch game is a very cautious thing, because if things do go south, let's say in the economy, I don't know, I'm not an economist, but let's say things do go south, I believe these things, because they are pretty liquid, will start to go, and with that, you'll see prices come down quick. The auction houses will try to save face. It will be difficult for them to do so, because it's a very catered, old school business, and you'll see a bit of a dumping happening with the resellers. And so I think it could be kind of a chain reaction. So that ultra high-end, super rare, interesting stuff, there could be a pullback, at least in the short term. Though if you love watches, you're a watch geek, you're a watch collector, it's not just about trying to realize some return or do some other kind of alternative investment or some interesting kind of strategy or get this interesting exposure to the industry. I think it can't hurt long term if there is scarcity in the watch, something super rare. But if we're talking about certain Journes that there was enough of them floating around compared to the demand, well, let's face it, the Wall Street guys did start up buying those, which drove up the demand with the pricing. So there could be a pullback if there's dumping, there's just no interest in wearing them. Why have it? I'm not sure. Once again, this is just my insight that I'm sharing with you of things that could happen. But once again, to recap, if you really love the watch, I don't think that it makes sense to wait, because you're only robbing yourself the pleasure of wearing the watch that you really truly do love and enjoy. But if it's speculative, or you're like, I really want this because I think it's going to be worth double in 5-6 years, I don't really think that's a great strategy. But some people do it. And so, hey, if you feel like gambling, there's many other places you can gamble. But I'm a watch dealer at the end of the day, so why not gamble in a watch if you're a gambler? Anyway, what do you guys think about the watch market? Is there a watch that you've been on the fence with? Leave in the comments below. I'll try to give you my exact opinion on that watch, if I think it's pretty good or not in the short term, or maybe the long term. We'll see what you put in the comments below. Please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. It really does help. YouTube is an interesting place with an interesting algorithm, and thumbs up, likes, and subscribes are also very interesting, at least to me. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P. Ciao.